Chapter 18, Physical Creation. After presenting the plan of salvation and instructions for fulfilling our new family roles, the work of the physical creation began. Lucifer and those who supported him were angry that his alternative plan had not been chosen. They had become bitter and walked out. Unfortunately, the seeds of war were planted in their hearts. As the second-born spirit son of God, Lucifer had been chosen to take an active role in the creation of the earth, but Michael, the third-born son, was selected to fill that role in his stead. Our Father put Jehovah and Michael in charge of physically creating the earth. This is the first thing we read about in the Old Testament today. By choosing Jesus as the Savior, he, in a sense, said, "Let there be light," and there was light. Even the light of Jesus Christ. Jehovah and Michael did not create our earth on their own. It would be unbecoming of God's nature to fail to delegate the work of the creation to others as well. A few others are named, but I expect that all of us had a small role in the physical creation of this world. The scriptures describe a hierarchy of angels in heaven. Below our heavenly parents, we see the highest station of angels, the seraphim. The physical representation of a seraphim is a flying serpent with 3 sets of wings, symbolizing the ability to travel the universe in service to God. These angels oversee the thrones and cherubim. The Sphinx in Egypt is likely a depiction of a cherubim without wings. The next station of angels consists of dominions, virtues, and powers, and the station of angels that works most closely with us on earth consists of principalities, archangels, and angels. These distinctions are generally unimportant in our everyday lives, but references to them are frequently and subtly made in the scriptures. It is beneficial to be aware of these terms. This physical creation marked the realization of the Creator's long-awaited dream. Now, as a loving Father, he could guide his creatures through eternities of harmony and peace, observing divine laws. As a member of the creation presidency of heaven, Adam, known then as Michael the Archangel, stood beside Jehovah and oversaw the creation of the earth. They had the assistance of angels, namely 3 specific messengers, who were later to be born and live upon the earth as ordinary mortals and prophets, but were first to supervise the work of creation, then to instruct Adam and his posterity. These 3 angels have charge over the Melchizedek priesthood. They will be known in mortality as Peter, James, and John. To begin the physical creation, Jehovah and Michael found a chaotic part of the universe, matter unorganized, or what scientists call an irregular galaxy. They placed intelligence within this matter and instructed it on how to fulfill the measure of its creation. They did this to create an environment that would be sustainable for our habitation once we entered our physical bodies. The gods watched those things which they had ordered until they obeyed. We are not told how long it took the elements to begin to trust and then obey, but we can observe their strict obedience to his commands in our world today and learn from their example. We are told that, after contemplating the vast void, Jehovah raised his mighty hands and commanded the materialization of the wonders that would compose the cosmos. His order resounded everywhere. This created a paradise of life and joy that harmoniously revolved around Mount Zion. We bowed in reverence upon seeing this miracle and sang a creation song as a way of greeting the new creations to life. The entire universe joined in this song of gratitude in the promise of eternal fidelity. In the 1st century AD, when the Hebrew Bible was being translated into Aramaic, in a version called the Targum, an alternate version of the creation account was included. This early, non-canonized creation account says, "With wisdom, God created the heavens and the earth." This is an interesting way of reading the account because wisdom is one of the names of the female deity. D&C 88 teaches that all of the kingdoms of the families of the gods are located in organized space. This is the territory that the family of the gods has conquered. They have the never-ending task of expanding their dominion throughout the infinite universe. D&C 93 teaches that everything in the universe is composed of 2 types of material, intelligence and matter. Brigham Young taught that matter is capable of receiving intelligence in the same way that our bodies can receive our spirits. This allows intelligence to control the matter, causing it to move and make choices. On the same topic, Brigham Young taught that the energy we see throughout the universe is intelligence in matter responding to the pattern it was taught to fill the measure of its creation. Once intelligence is clothed in matter, God can instruct it to take on more matter and combine with other intelligences. We observe this process as two intelligences, clothed in hydrogen, combine with an intelligence clothed in oxygen to create water. God could as easily command those intelligences to mix with others to make wine, which he did. On a bigger scale, we can see how trillions of these elements combine to make up our physical bodies. Once that took place, God was able to place our spirit inside our physical tabernacles to govern those elements. God has given us dominion over the elements that make up our physical bodies. Our first task is to learn to govern our own elements. My boys understand this concept well. When they start losing control, I remind them to regain control of their elements. Gaining this control is what the world calls willpower. And self-mastery is the very purpose of our life on Earth. We each possess a unique intelligence that makes us who we are. Because we were valiant in the pre-Earth life, our intelligence was clothed, first in spirit and now in a physical tabernacle. The purpose of this life is to learn to control the universe of intelligences inside of us. In a BYU lecture, Cleon Skousen once said, "Let me just tell you something about yourself. You have a little governing I am. That says, I know that I am. I think you are, but I know I am. That little intelligence inside you is as old as God is." In the 93rd section of D&C, God told us that he didn't create it, nor could he. And God doesn't need us worrying about it too much yet. He says, "When you get to where I am, I'll show you where your little I am came from." Unfortunately, the intelligence that resides in the element at the end of my little finger is not permitted in this mortal state to communicate to my brain what it is. Seeing, but it is seeing something. In the resurrection, all the intelligences that make up our body will be able to communicate with our governing intelligence at any given time. We know from our study of the origin of intelligence that in our pre-mortal state, we who received bodies of spirit were even more valiant at obeying God's commands than all the intelligences in matter that make up all of the galaxies, including the dust and water of this earth. Even though the spiritual man is noble and great, the natural man, which is our current state, is quick to do iniquity and slow to do good. Our task is to get our spirit to overcome the weaknesses of the flesh. Oh, how great is the nothingness of the children of men! Yea, even they are less than the dust of the earth. For behold, the dust of the earth moveth hither and thither, to the dividing asunder, at the command of our great and everlasting God. Yea, behold, at his voice do the hills and the mountains tremble and quake. And by the power of his voice they are broken up, and become smooth, yea, even like unto a valley. Yea, by the power of his voice doth the whole earth shake. Yea, by the power of his voice do the foundations rock, even to the very center. Yea, and if he says unto the earth, Move, it is moved. Yea, if he says unto the earth, Thou shalt go back, that it lengthen out the day for many hours, it is done. And thus, according to his word, the earth goeth back, and it appeareth unto man that the sun standeth still. Yea, and behold, this is so. For surely it is the earth that moveth, and not the sun. And behold also, if he says unto the waters of the great deep, Be thou dried up, it is done. Behold, if he says unto this mountain, Be thou raised, and come over and fall upon that city, that it be buried up, behold, it is done. All the intelligences we can observe throughout the universe obey God's commands. So why is it that we, who were the noble and great ones, are not as obedient when God gives us commandments to follow? The answer can only be that our current state of weakness is due to the effects of the veil. Without it, we would be even more obedient to God's commands than all the elements that we witness obeying him throughout chemistry, physics, and the other observable sciences. The intelligences throughout the universe obey God as well as they do because they currently have perfect knowledge. They are not under the effects of the veil as we are. Intelligences were placed into matter unorganized at the beginning of the physical creation. Over time, they learned to obey God perfectly. And if the veil were to be lifted from our eyes, and we could see and remember God as they now see and know him, we would obey him perfectly too. Our task in mortality, like theirs, is to get our spirit to overcome the temptations of the flesh and become slow to do iniquity and quick to do good. By developing this character, we will put ourselves on the path to perfection at some future time in eternity. The creation narrative, as found in the Scriptures, is most profitably understood symbolically and through revelation, though there is a historical reality behind it all. It should not surprise us if we find that the historical truth differs from the poetic representation in its scriptural form. It was never intended to be a scientific explanation, but rather as a means for humanity to understand its relationship with God. The mystery behind miracles is simply the understanding that God is a great scientist. He has command of the elements. There is no doctrinal reason for anyone to believe that the earth was not created or formed over billions of years, just as scientists now claim. Joseph Smith was once standing trial in New York when Emir Harris asked him, "What was Jesus' first miracle?" Everyone expected him to answer, "Turning water into wine in Cana." But Joseph was not limited to knowledge of this mortal life alone, so he replied, "He created the earth, Franklin D." Richards once stated that Joseph Smith believed the organization of the earth was carried out through natural processes, and that the Almighty knew precisely how to do it. Modern science has developed significantly since Joseph Smith's death, but he clearly already had a profound understanding of the cosmos. For example, Orson Hyde recorded that Joseph described places in space that were completely lightless and so dense that a pinhead's worth of material found there would weigh more than the mass of the entire Earth. Yet black holes were not discovered until 1971. Einstein's theory of relativity was not fully realized until 1905. Still, Joseph produced the Book of Abraham, which taught about Kolob and the relativity of time in the Pearl of Great Price. Joseph understood more than even modern science. For example, he taught that it is possible to travel faster than the speed of light. If the universe is truly infinite in every direction, then it can have no center. You can only measure a center from the outer limits. If there is any restriction on time at all, then there will be some places in the universe that could not be reached. Einstein's constant in relativity theory is the speed of light. But the prophets teach that angels can travel much faster than that. God and spirit beings can move and communicate at breakneck speeds. Travel and communication throughout God's kingdom seem to approach the speed of thought, making great distances irrelevant. Let's suppose these spiritual resurrected beings can appear in a new place by simply concentrating on the 3 Ds of apparition from Harry Potter: determination, deliberation, destination. In the book Harry Potter, we are warned that those who attempt this before they are qualified are in danger of splinching themselves. This idea is consistent with true doctrine. If we desire to travel as God does, we must first be resurrected. Some external power must transform our physical bodies into celestial material. If God desires to travel at the speed of thought, it seems they can. If they want to comprehend every thought of every living creature, they may. Perhaps they automatically do. Joseph not only restored true science before modern science caught up, but also ancient history. The proper knowledge of creation by organization was lost in the 4th century AD with the adoption of the Christian creeds. From that time to this present, much of the Christian world has viewed the creation as ex nihilo, out of nothing. But Joseph taught that the earth was organized from existing matter, which drove the people of his time crazy because that idea had been lost thousands of years earlier. Since Joseph's death, archaeological discoveries have confirmed that no ancient cultures believed that the earth was created ex nihilo. Everywhere you look in antiquity, you will find similar themes in ancient records: a council in heaven, a creation from existing elements, the future atonement of a god, and the purpose of growing to become like God ourselves, as Joseph revealed. In English, we often have a word for an adult animal and a different word for the baby form of that animal, such as cow-calf or goose-gosling. We are not accustomed to referring to ourselves as godlings, but that is what the human race is. As children of God, we are, in reality, little g-gods or godlings in training. When we grow up, we will naturally inherit all that the Father hath, but if we are faithful, we will receive the real gift and become all that the Father is, including the blessings of having a spouse with whom we can bring forth endless posterity throughout eternity. Just as Abraham was promised to have more posterity than the grains of sand on the sea or stars in the heavens. A common theme in apocryphal writings, discovered only long after Joseph Smith's martyrdom, suggests that, at every new creation, elements are reshuffled. It appears that old worlds are dismantled to provide material for the making of new or better ones. From the Pistis Sophia, we read, "The picture of the constant mixing goes on in the universe, in which old, worn-out matter is returned to chaos as dead matter. Then it is melted down until all the impurities are removed, so it is refined and ready to be poured from one kind of mold into another, the whole process by which the souls, as well as substances, are thrown back into the mixing. It is under Melchizedek's supervision. The great reprocessor, the purifier, the preparer of worlds, he and the 5 great princes, who specialize in the different elements, take over the refuse of old world souls. They are responsible for molding the elements back together into new combinations, ensuring that no 2 new materials are identical. There is no waste or shortage of the material. The worlds go on forever. They cease not. They ever increase and are multiplied, but they are not brought to an end, neither do they decrease. John Taylor once made these observations about the creation of the Earth. It was created from the fragments of previous Earths. A tremendous explosion brought forth our cosmos, and the fossils now being discovered may have originated on earlier Earth. It would therefore not be a useful tool in gauging the age of this Earth. How old is this Earth? The materials that make it up are everlasting. How long has it been in its present form? It may have taken considerable time to set up. Due to plate tectonics, we can measure the continents moving towards each other a couple of inches every year. With enough time, they will eventually collide, which accounts for certain geological formations. Our scientists have only been able to measure slow continental drift. They use the current speed they observe to calculate a timeline. However, we are aware of several catastrophic events that have led to massive, sudden changes. Scientists tend to discount the numerous historical records from around the world that attest to the global flood or the sudden splitting apart of the continents. This event was recorded in the Bible in the days of Peleg. Scientists dislike having to account for unknowns in their calculations. It is easier to discount the historical record altogether, but one historical explanation for the lost city of Atlantis links it to America's separation from the rest of the world. The Egyptians even call the Atlantic Ocean the False Sea because they could remember a time when it wasn't there. When we hear the age of the Earth from scientists, we must understand that they are assuming the Earth has never had a more active period of chaos than we are used to measuring. So, their answer can only be accurately seen as the very oldest the Earth could be. Now that we've cleared that up, we are not told exactly how old the Earth is, but it's possible that the scriptures and scientists aren't as far apart as they appear. The biblical account describes the land as a single massive landmass at the end of Earth's creation, surrounded by the ocean. Similar to what scientists suggest the Earth looked like 250 million years ago in the Pangea model. 250 million years is an interesting number because it coincides with a previously unknown and unexplored piece of church history. William W. Phelps stated in a letter to William Smith that was published in the church newspaper shortly after Joseph was martyred, when the house of Israel begins to come into the glorious mysteries of the kingdom and find Jesus Christ, whose goings forth, as the prophet said, have been from eternity, and that eternity, agreeable to the records found in the catacombs of Egypt, has been going on almost 2,555,000,000 years. It almost tempts the flesh to fly to God, to muster faith like Enoch, to be translated, and to see and know as we are now seen and known. It appears from the catacombs of Egypt statement that this number of years that have passed since the beginning of our current eternal round came from the writings of Abraham, or the unpublished book of Joseph. In any case, with some careful math, we can devise how he may have arrived at this number. The Earth is prophesied to last in its current mortal state for 7,000 years. 7,000 times 365 days per year equals 250 million. Now, if we account for the fact that one day for God is equal to 1,000 Earth years, we can convert the number of God's days to the number of Earth years, which gives us the 2.5 billion WW. Phelps number. So, the 250 million years that scientists attribute to the Pangea timeline is the same number the Bible gives for the years since the fall of Adam and Eve, or approximately the time of the global flood. If we account for the fact that the Earth was created and dwelt in the solar system, governed under the time of Kolob, until Adam and Eve left the Garden of Eden. Many people do not realize that the Earth is actually in a different position or realm now than it was when it was first created, that it was created out of the fragments of other Earths, that it is alive and has intelligence, or that it will be resurrected along with the rest of the human family and be rolled back into the presence of God. These truths remind us that the Earth is not something we are meant to escape. Instead, we are to be participants with it in transformation. The prophet Joseph taught, "This earth will be rolled back into the presence of God and crowned with celestial glory." How could the earth be rolled back into the presence of God unless it were geographically located therein? The first place? Lorenzo Snow no doubt learned this truth from the prophet Joseph, for he spoke in similar terms of the earth's fall and return. The earth shall be rolled back in pristine purity into its primeval orbit, and the inhabitants thereof dwell upon it in perfect peace and righteousness. John Taylor taught that the earth was first organized near the planet Kolob. This gives us some idea of the earth's proximity to God at the time of its creation, since Kolob is the planet nearest to God. Brigham Young taught that the earth was banished from its more glorious state or orbit of revolution for man's sake. Elsewhere he taught, when men fell, the earth fell into space and took up its abode in this planetary system. This is the glory the earth came from, and when it is glorified, it will return unto the presence of the Father. Such were the sentiments of Elder Bruce R. McConkie. When Adam fell, the earth fell also and became a mortal sphere. In the end, our Mother Earth will be resurrected and receive her celestial glory. From its resurrected elements, our heavenly bodies will be resurrected. The question may be asked, do not the particles that compose a man's body, when returned to Mother Earth, go to make or compose other bodies? No, they do not. Neither can the fundamental particles that comprise the bodies of men become parts of the bodies of other men or beasts, fowls, fish, insects, or vegetables. A divine law governs them, and though they may pass from the knowledge of the scientific world, that divine law still holds, governs, and controls them. Man's body may be buried in the ocean, wild beasts may eat it, or it may be burned to ashes and scattered to the four winds. Yet the particles of which it is composed will not be incorporated into any form of vegetable or animal life to become a part of their structure. If buried in the earth, our physical bodies undergo decomposition and return to Mother Earth, but no matter how minute the particles are, they're watched over and will be preserved until the resurrection. And at the sound of the trumpet of God, every particle of our physical structures necessary to make our tabernacles perfect will be assembled to be rejoined with the Spirit. Every man in his order, not one particle will be lost. Perhaps this statement from Joseph Smith is more explicit on the subject. He said, "There is no fundamental principle belonging to a human system that ever goes into another in this world or the world to come. I care not what the theories of men are. We have the testimony that God will raise us, and He has the power to do it. If anyone supposes that any part of our bodies, that is, the fundamental parts thereof, ever goes into another body, he is mistaken, understanding that this earth would one day become the celestial kingdom." Orson Pratt calculated whether the earth had enough land to hold all the people who had ever lived on it. He came up with several acres for everyone. Joseph did not teach that we would live on this earth for eternity, just that it would be a launching pad of sorts. The meek will inherit the earth and continue to dwell here while we learn and progress towards perfection.